My name is Craig Briers. I'm on our business development side. Brief introduction about myself. I've been a developer for websites for about 13 years. Actually started as an intern at American Eagle when I was in high school. Branched off, ran my own web design company, doing kind of the one-man shop approach, everything from creative to programming to development to sales. In addition to that, I've always been very entrepreneurial. I've run a few different businesses, most notably a disc jockey company in the northwest suburbs. So I bring a unique perspective to our clients and to website solutions in that it's more than just technical. I can talk to the specifics from the business and operation side of things, not just focusing on the technical side of things. And that is what Mike's for.
Mike Avello. I'm currently the director of front-end development. I started at American Eagle as well as an intern about 6-7 years ago, so I've been here quite a while as well. Before that, I was always interested in the web, the development and all, did things freelancing here and there. So I right now specialize in kind of strategizing, managing, and everything to deal with the front-end code. Mobile and responsive is a big factor of that, and I work with all the rest of the front-end developers to make sure that we get the best thing possible for everyone.
And since we do have a pretty manageable group, it'd be really helpful to us. We can make our presentation as relevant as possible. Just a quick around the table, your name and the company you represent, and if it's B2B or B2C.
Sean Omar, I'm with Mega Glove and Safety, primarily B2B, a little bit B2C.
Okay, thank you.
Bill McCarthy, Misericordia, and not-for-profit, so B2C.
Sharon Dominelli, Finmark, B2C.
Mike Donnelly, Finmark, B2C.
Pat Duggan, St. Patrick High School.
Okay.
Adam Purcell, Cake Soup, B2C.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. So the goals for today. Some high-level objectives that we want to make sure that we account for. In terms of our goals for the customer, we want you guys to depart the meeting with at least one idea that you can act upon, whether it's a technical improvement, a marketing strategy, something that you can take back to your company, leave with one good idea. More importantly, understand the options when it comes to mobile. We're not going to go into too much detail on the specific options and kind of which one is best fit, although we are going to cover the basics so you can kind of walk away with a good understanding of what the options are in case you don't already have a mobile solution. More importantly, ask questions. This forum is for you. Feel free to interrupt us. We definitely do not want this to be us talking to you. I will not be offended if you raise your hand and stop us. Again, we want you guys to walk away with valuable information. And our goal is very simple. We're going to limit the amount of geek speak. So we're going to keep things non-technical and focused on business users as much as possible.
Less to say.
Well, we should have had the gong. All right, so we're going to start off with a skills test. This is a very interactive presentation, so you are encouraged to have your phone out in front of you. So those of you who have a phone, if you could first start off, send a text message to the number 55155. And just in terms of the message, just write forum. And once you're complete, just go ahead and raise your hand just so I can see. All right, perfect. All right. You guys should be receiving a response in a few seconds. Go ahead and raise your hand if you do get that response. Perfect. All right. People have passed. Good. Basic skills test. We'll revisit that technology later. What we're going to first start with is the mobile options. The mobile landscape is ever-changing, and new devices are introduced every single year, month. So it's very difficult to stay on top of the mobile landscape. It's also becoming the majority of where your consumers are coming from, or at least using a mobile device as part of their buying process. Maybe not to actually buy that product, but it might support the decision to buy that product. So we're first going to look at some of the high-level options. This is the problem we're looking to solve here, right? This is the web as we know it today. We have smartphones, phablets, which is kind of the large, oversized phone, e-readers, tablets, laptops, Xbox gaming devices, desktops, TVs, in-store kiosks. All of these things can be considered mobile, with the exception of desktops, unless you want to carry around a desktop on your back and roam the streets. More importantly, we have all different types of users who are using all these devices. We have let's say the soccer mom who has a few minutes to go spend at the mall. What are the kind of questions she's asking herself? Where is the nearest store? Do they have my son's soccer cleats? Can I buy this? Then you have the other types of mobile users. People who are involved in the in-store buying process, or they see a product somewhere and they want to learn more about it. Most common thought we see is it cheaper? Can I get this somewhere better? Does Amazon have it? Maybe I want to purchase it later, send myself a notification, take a picture. Or questioning the fact that her husband really wants this ugly sweater. So we're stuck with this complex issue of having so many devices and so many different types of users. Going forward, I think I got a laser pointer here. Perfect. We have the lady on the tablet. She's a little bit more engaged. So she has emails on so many different deals. She may have seen something in the store and she's questioning, should I buy it now? Maybe she's at home relaxing after a long day's work and it's time to shop. And now, not to just focus on females, the demographics are changing where even the older people, to classify them, are using mobile devices or becoming internet accessible. So more often than not, their first question is going to be, how do I even do this? Or, I'm more comfortable buying in the store. Maybe this is at my nearest location. Or even questioning what you have on their site. What is PayPal? They're not familiar with it. So we look to solve all of these different scenarios. What we're going to talk about now is some of the options to solve those scenarios. I'm going to let Mike take over and explain one of those options.
So the example that we have up here is currently the Stuart Weitzman's dedicated mobile site. And the benefit with having the mobile website is that is one example that it's a forked design. So you have a dedicated experience for whatever mobile device you're targeting, and whether it's a phone, small tablets, and so on. The other benefit is that because of that, you're able to control the content on there, have it focused to those devices. It's also can be less costly if you're trying to upgrade to that path where you don't have an immediate idea of redeveloping your entire site. It also can have some more powerful lines in terms of having the unique experience, because again, you're focusing on a specific use case. So if you're on a phone, you make the argument is like, okay, what is that user actually going to do on that phone as opposed to a desktop, so you can fine tune it. And then the cross-device and browser compatible, what's nice with having the dedicated mobile is that we know that if you're targeting a phone, there's a limited set of browsers, devices that you may be targeting. If you're targeting all phones, it's going to be Android, Windows Phone, and so on. You're not worrying about the desktop browsers in those lists. Now, the disadvantage, however, is that as a user, there's going to be ones that want anything and everything that the desktop has to offer. So if you have a dedicated mobile site that now is a limited subset of the content from your desktop site, and as a user going to, and now I'm trying to find that information that I know exists on your desktop, I may not be able to find it in the same way on your mobile device. And then it's also can be optimized in a way where you have the less images, maybe more streamlined context, so it may not be as visually geared towards that of what the desktop site is. So if you have a lot of imagery that is important to your brand, usually the dedicated mobile, you're trying to streamline that completely, so it's trying to find that balance. The other downside is that because you're having the forked content into two different sites, you're managing essentially two different sites. We do have means where the content on one could be forked into the other as is, but again, you're still having to keep in mind that you're going to have two websites at one point if that content doesn't work naturally over both.
So the second example, or I guess before we move forward, dedicated mobile site. Any questions in terms of what exactly that is or other example? Go ahead.
A question on one of the disadvantages, the users that want to access all content. What are the thoughts about giving the customer an option? Do you want to go to mobile site? Do you want to
And that's where, if you notice on a lot of dedicated mobile sites, when they have a desktop and a dedicated mobile, they usually do have that, return the full site. And sometimes I've even seen it where the full desktop site even has a link that says, view the mobile site, because I don't know how many times, I'm a Windows Phone user. So when I first started on Windows Phone, I'd go to a website, I never got a mobile site because the sites were detecting, I don't know what you are, you must be a desktop. So it was always nice to see a site that had up front and center, right away click the mobile, so I didn't have to search for what the URL they were using and so on for the mobile. And that is kind of the nice thing with it, is that you're putting in that power into the user hands when you're displaying it that way and stuff. So if the content's not there, at least there's a method to get back to the desktop in an easily fashion.
Out of American Eagle's clients that have mobile sites, do a lot of current clients use that functionality in terms of asking?
Yes, absolutely.
Especially with the dedicated mobile sites, we have it virtually on all the dedicated mobile sites where it links back to the desktop.
And more importantly, we're going to touch on some of the analytics later on. You want to monitor how many times people are switching from mobile to desktop. If you see it's a large majority of people getting out of your mobile site and just looking for that desktop experience, it's time to kind of rethink how we're approaching mobile and identifying what's motivating them to leave mobile and go to desktop. What are we not providing them? So it's giving them the option, but then understanding kind of the behavior as to why they're taking that option. Because just as mobile is not changing, and nor the amount of devices that are released, your website can't stay stagnant either. You need to adapt to not only the devices, but how people are interacting with your website on a mobile.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When we get back to the disadvantages, and one of them, that you mentioned, one of the biggest ones was managing two different sites. The content management systems that you guys have, to what extreme do they blend the two together that will cross over both sites? Is my first question.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, if you're managing two sites, and you have two sites, a dedicated mobile and a regular site, are they operating on the same server, or are they operating on separate servers?
Good questions. So the first question, what is kind of the shared content across both sites? Part of the planning process is going to be to establish exactly that. So for e-commerce, your product data, that's going to live in one central place. So we're not going to have two separate product silos here, one for desktop, one for mobile. Really, on the mobile version, you're just going to decide what you're not going to show in contrast to the desktop site. So on the desktop site, we might have product image, alternate photos, keywords or descriptions, videos, reviews. On the mobile site, we can access all that information, but we might only display one product photo, a link to a video, a product description, maybe a shorter one, and then everything else is just kind of not showing on mobile. Additionally, you can have mobile-only content that is only specifically for a mobile device. So that might be a paragraph saying, check to see if this product is near a store or in a store near you, or other calls to action. So we can leverage a lot of that content in the content management system to be used in mobile, but ultimately part of the planning process is going to be to decide what needs to be different or separate. And then in terms of the hosting, more often than not, it's going to be on the same server unless you're doing an immense amount of traffic or heavy mobile traffic or experiencing speed issues. If you really need multimedia, so video per se, we'd probably put your video on a different server so that we're not going to burden that mobile user to load a large video on a slow server.
And then one more question to follow up to that is, if you have a dedicated mobile site, then when you e-commerce site, are you now having to have two merchant accounts for checkout, two SSLs or anything like that?
The SSL, that's a great question. Depending on how we set up the mobile site, it could vary. If it's a subdomain, it might require a different type of SSL, so maybe m.ecommercestore.com. If it's a subsection, so e-commerce store / mobile, you can leverage that existing SSL. In terms of the payment authorization or any kind of those third-party systems, you should not need a duplicate one as long as it's on that same server and kind of operating out of that single environment. Now, there's many times where you might have a mobile site that is completely separate and independent from your existing website. There's a lot of turnkey solutions out there. If you branch off and have it completely siloed and disconnected from your existing e-commerce site, that's where you'd have to probably duplicate all the back-end features. Good questions. Good questions. Okay, so the next example, mobile apps. So we're talking about things that are native apps is probably the common term that you're going to hear. Apps that you're going to have to download from iTunes, the Apple Store, Google Play. Any customers in here have an existing native app in use? Okay. Anybody interested or thinking about if a mobile or native app is a potential solution in the future? Okay. Could go through these pretty quickly. Yeah, go ahead.
And so the benefit with the native app is, and I'm sure all of you have used an app on one of your devices at one point, is that it's very focused on how you're using it. It's geared towards the phone, so if you're on iPhone, it's leveraging a lot of the iPhone-specific components. If you're on Android, it uses that. So it feels like it's a part of your device. And because of that, you have that benefit where you understand how to use it. You're probably not being like caught off guard on how do I do this, how do I do the other thing, because it's all part of your same operating system. Also, from a user standpoint, users have gotten used to having apps, and there's some studies where on average people have 7.2 apps where they use daily, like dedicated. So obviously the goal for many clients is trying to be one of those 7.2 apps that you would use daily. So it needs to meet that need that every day I'm like, you know what, I need to look up something, and that's what determines the use from there. The other benefit is that now you're able to make use of those device APIs, so you can do send push notifications. So if you have alerts, from either if it's like from a school perspective, you're getting alerts saying that, there's a snow day and stuff like that. If it's from an e-commerce standpoint, you could be actually pushing like, hey, you could save 20% off today by using this coupon without actually having to access the app directly. You can send that to the user to alert them. Besides that, then you also get the benefits of being based on that hardware. So you get the smoother running. You're not directly connected to the internet. You don't absolutely need it. You can have it where it has offline storage and everything. So if I'm at a coffee shop and they don't have Wi-Fi, who doesn't have that anymore? But if you're there, you don't want to go on the Wi-Fi, you don't want to connect to that, you can still leverage the app because it's all stored locally. The disadvantage is, however, is that the consumer actually has to go out, find that app, download it, or go to your site, find a link, and that targets them to actually download the app. So you're requiring the user to take that extra step. You also have to deal with developing it for the various devices. So there's ways of leveraging a core base code that's across all of them, but they're all still different. iPhone's different than Android, Windows Phone's different than all of them. So it comes down to who you're targeting. If you're just targeting iPhone, that's great, but now you're leaving everyone with Android out without any option. So there's always that development time, and that's part of strategizing and figure out what is your key focus.
And the last point here, a mobile app is best fit for a company or e-commerce brand that has a high percentage of brand loyalists, people who are ordering on a regular basis, people who might be distributing your products, who might be need to use the app as almost a sales tool, not necessarily an ordering portal, but a way to educate potential buyers on your product offerings. A mobile app could also be used for trade shows. Take all of your product information and kind of create a digital catalog that you can use to market yourself at a trade show. So the mobile app is, yes, it can be e-commerce, but more often than not, if you don't have that significant brand loyalty base, you're going to look for kind of those unique situations where a native app could benefit you. Any questions on a native app? All right. So the newest trend, which most of you probably have heard of, is called responsive design. To sum it up, it's a one-size-fits-all approach, meaning that there's going to be one version of your website that will automatically and dynamically change and manipulate the content based on the device that's accessing it. So what you see here is a website for Body Central, one of our customers, one CMS, one set of code, so to speak, but the device will automatically resize to the specific width of the device you're using. So what are some of the pros and cons when it comes to responsive design? I'm going to let Mike take over again.
And so I'm a big proponent for responsive design, but I also know that it's not a perfect fit for everyone. So the pros to it is that you have that same content across everywhere, and we discussed that during the dedicated mobile, is that content's available for the consumer to find across all of the devices. So whether or not I'm on my phone, tablet, PC, it's the same site. Everything's available to me one way or another. You also have that consistent UI and experience across the whole thing. So even if certain things change, so like on desktop you have a very large menu display of all your links, and on your mobile device you have a menu button, you still have that same look and feel across the board. It just changes a little bit to fine-tune to your usability. You also have everything is focused on that user first. So the idea is that you want it to be easy for the user at the end. So if you focus that way from a mobile perspective up to a desktop, you're really trying to make that experience be the easiest possible for them to get to the content that they demand.
I think one thing that's important to note too, if I'm going to pull up my example here, the website doesn't just compress everything and shift it down to fit the devices. We're actually changing out the style sheets, the navigation bar, images, so that there's certain elements that will...
So you got the nav bar right there, and then on the mobile, it turns into nav buttons to drop down. So it's easier to utilize, and it's bigger and bolder.
So the advantage here is that all the hard work is on our end. We program it so it reacts accordingly, but you had the benefit of only still managing one set of content through one content management system. So again, it's kind of that one-size-fits-all approach. Now, there are some disadvantages that Mike's going to talk about here.
So put down that the disadvantage happens to also be the same as the advantage of the same content accessible throughout all devices. The reason that I like putting that in both is that it comes down to what your content really is. So if you have, let's say, a lot of data for like in a tabular way, so it's a big table of data where you're doing comparisons back and forth.
Say a sizing chart.
Exactly. It's massive even on desktop because you have all that data in there, and so there's not really a way that you can squeeze that down on a phone where it's going to be as effective. So the downside is that since that's going to exist there, how do you manage that? Sometimes we're able to finagle it in a way where it can still be useful on a device. Other times, having that type of layout just won't work. So that's where the disadvantage comes in with having this one-size-fits-all. The related to that would be, again, if you had a very photo-heavy website, so you had a lot of images, large images and everything, is that you're still loading up those large images that you have on your desktop site on your small screen, so it's going to impact the overall performance of the site because you're still loading up essentially everything from that desktop. And then related to the images as well, there's been the talk, it's a tech term, is responsive images. The idea behind that is that it'd be great to have it where when you're on a phone, you're getting an image that's tuned to the phone, not to the desktop. And when you're on desktop, you get the large desktop. The tech right there isn't really at a point where it's built into the browser, so there's not really an effective way of handling that. So you're still stuck with kind of one side or the other, or kind of working around it in one way or another. And again, that's kind of where our strategy comes in, is figuring out that balancing act of what is the best option for the specific project on hand.
Any questions on responsive design?
I've read about issues with responsive design that also go back to two main points, and that is the responsive design seems to be, in a lot of the examples that I've seen, it seems to be very modular design look, so that it's spread across all these different device sizes. And that kind of limits you from an aesthetic standpoint of your web design. And the second issue that seemed to stick out to me as an issue was load time. Seemed to be an issue with responsive design, which could also affect, in some respect, your SERPs, for Google ranking and stuff. But, how does that, and then also too, one step further, with all that, they kind of address it with what I've heard about and read about, which is a hybrid design of responsive and dynamic. Where do we go, to meet all the perfect needs, and how do we as consumers decide, as business people, how do we decide what blend, is going to be right for us?
So that's a great question, and we're actually going to touch on some of those decisions, but there's not going to be any perfect solution. So we need to look at catering to the majority. So if we know that 50% of your traffic comes from a desktop device, the other 50% is half tablet and half smartphone, there's really the three distinct buckets of users. If all those users are more often than not buying something or intending to buy something from that device, now we're going to ask ourselves a question, okay, what is the solution that will not only serve up our website to those different users, what is going to provide the best mechanism to allow them to make a purchase? So that's really where our strategic team comes into play and goes deep into the analytics and the user behavior and trying to figure out which option is better. While I'd love to say that a certain option is a long-term strategy, there's no way to tell. Out of the ones that we've presented, responsive design gives you the, most comfort in being able to adapt to changes in the future. A dedicated mobile site, it is what it is. It's not going to change. At least responsive design can still shift and scale and adapt. Your second question was the technology that's kind of a cross between responsive design and what they're calling now adaptive design. That's something that you can transition into if you see the data and analytics that my smartphone users are having a horrible conversion rate. Only on smartphones that have a large screen size, let's say 5 inches. What can I do to improve it? Well, now we can kind of create a different adaptive design specific to that type of user set. So, like I said earlier to your comment as well, is whatever we decide at step one is not going to be the long-term solution. You have to be prepared to adjust, look at the data, and make informed decisions moving forward to keep up with that.
And
Which one is more flexible moving forward? Which route?
And what it comes down to is responsive itself has the most flexibility from the standpoint of device usage. And what that means is that right now I have a phone that is, I believe it's 4.7 inches. Tomorrow I may have a phone that's 5.3 inches with a different resolution. The website is going to flex for that device. Where previously when we first were doing dedicated mobile devices, everyone was focused on the iPhone this, the iPhone that. So what you had is that you had a lot of dedicated mobile sites that were focused specifically for the size of the iPhone. What happened then is that then you got a phone that was bigger, and now you basically had the iPhone size with extra space on the either side of it, which wasn't ideal. When we deal with mobile sites right now, the way I view it is that there's no such thing as a device-specific mobile site. A mobile site still needs to be flexible, just like how responsive is, because you don't know what you're going to be using. And so people have phablets, people have small phones. I have a Palm Veer that is a 2.8-inch screen as well. Nothing works on there. It's so tiny. But there's the flexibility in it. Now, on top of that, with the dedicated mobile, is that even though that works for the options when you need to split the content, you still have those two different sites. So with responsive, it takes it up that next level where you now have it from the desktop to mobile and vice versa. So you're covering that whole range, because again, what we face now too is that before it was always the rule of thumb, it's like, okay, everyone has a 15-inch screen. That's the average. Now you have 17, 22. People are on TVs. People have it in their pocket. People have it in their Tesla Model S. Now, why you're using the internet on your Model S, I'm not sure. But you can't determine what the screen is. So even though you're on a desktop, that desktop screen is not stable anymore. So that gives you the most flexibility. But again, what the real question comes in is what is your users utilizing and what meets your needs as well. So it's really trying to find that balancing act of flexibility and really to meet the demands of your own site.
And one follow-up example really quick, and then we got to move to the next part. 'Cause Aaron, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, 15 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to fly through the rest of this. Good example of taking a kind of hybrid approach. You have a responsive design website, so one size fits all. You as a business owner notice that when it comes to people actually checking out the checkout process, they're jumping ship. It might be your forms are too complicated to fill out on a mobile device. It's difficult. It's not working. Well, what are your options? We could route users to a mobile-specific checkout process that's tailored to just that mobile device. So better forms, different layout, and really kind of put a Band-Aid solution for those critical points where the device is preventing people from going through the purchasing process. So that's really a good example of kind of that adaptive design. So we have 15 minutes left. The second part of this is going to be looking at how we can create value from mobile. So not necessarily on the technology side. It's going to be more looking at the data analytics and turning that into an ROI beyond just people buying things from a mobile device. So I'm going to move a little bit quickly, but again, feel free to kind of stop me as we go through. All right, so as business owners or as representatives of your business, ask yourself, can you answer yes to any of these statements? Do I want to know how mobile consumers are using my website? Do I care about the most popular devices, especially mobile ones, used by my consumers? Does the marketing department, want to know what pages are important to mobile users? Do my consumers' needs vary based on where they're at geographically, physically, in the car, at home, at work? More on the marketing side, is it effective to market to consumers on their mobile device? Do your existing marketing, especially email campaigns, generate results? Are you doing email blasts? Do you market across multiple channels? Social, Facebook, Twitter, pay-per-click, search engine optimization, print, media. If you can answer yes to any of these questions, mobile marketing absolutely applies to you. If you're not already doing it, you're losing dollars every single day. So I broke these kind of out. These first four statements refer to implicit mobile data. Things that you as business owners have access to already that you can understand and use this to make informed business decisions, especially when it comes to targeting the mobile audience. So let's look at an example of one. This is straight out of Google Analytics. What you see here is basically a flow path of mobile users. Let me see that. Oh, there we go. These are all my mobile users for a certain set time period. Not surprisingly, most of them, their first action is going to the home page. Second most popular page for mobile users is store locations. This e-commerce retailer has physical brick and mortar stores as well. But more interestingly, the third and fourth most popular pages are on sale items. So what does that tell us? Well, if we're looking to put in a mobile strategy, or I may already have a mobile strategy, I'm looking to improve it, what are things that this data tells me I should look at? Well, if the second most popular page is seeking out store information, how to order, where I can buy, mobile devices give off a GPS signal. We can get that person's location and automatically route them or display information to that nearest store. Another example, if we're not going to do anything technology-wise, that mobile page should focus on sale items. We know that those are the third and fourth most popular pages. Let's take the question and guessing game out of it. Put that right in the front of that mobile page. Get them to where they need to go. But more importantly, look at these drop-offs. So this red is basically everyone who's exiting the site at a certain point in time. Understand why people are leaving your site from a mobile device. Look to solve that question. Those of you who answered yes to, do I care what devices are popular on my website? Again, this is from Google Analytics. Not a surprise, Apple iPhone and Apple iPad are the two most popular devices. More interestingly, look at how much time people spend on the site compared to not only the average, but all other devices. People on an Apple iPhone spend almost a minute less than any other mobile device. Let's ask ourselves, why? Is the site hard to use? Are people on iPhones seeking specific information? What was their motivation for actually coming to the site first? What was the source? Was it a pay-per-click campaign? Was it driving around? You have access to all this information. Here's an example of that. This is the same e-commerce store. There's a lot of numbers here. Don't worry, I'm only going to focus on a few of them. We have all of our visits, mobile-only visits, mobile visits within 5 miles of a physical store location, and then mobile visits within 5 miles of a store location who actually went to the store location's page on the website to find what was nearest to them. No surprise here. People who are close to a store and looking for directions, that's also their lowest conversion rate. People aren't going to buy on the website when they're within 5 miles of a store. Not a big surprise. But more interestingly, people nearest to a store, for whatever reason, is also their largest source of new visitors to their website. What does that tell you? That store is giving out brand recognition. It's prompting users to engage with that brand. It's a great marketing tool. But that's an issue. 7 out of 10 customers who are new to the brand, less than 1% of them, less than 0.1%, are actually buying something. So, this is an issue. Quick question, what are possible solutions? How can we solve that scenario where people are close to a store, but they're not buying on the website? What can we do to help that experience? Again, we're looking at not purchases per se. How do we create value out of other types of mobile actions? Pop quiz, anybody? Okay. Let's look at possible solutions. So, explicit mobile data. What are things that we can do to solve that issue I just showed you? But also build that mobile subscriber base. So those of you who answered yes to, is it effective to market to consumers on their mobile devices? Do email campaigns work for you? Do you market across multiple channels? Let's look at ways that we can capitalize and capture mobile data. How many people right here collect mobile cell phone numbers on their website as part of a banner, form, checkout process? Nothing? Okay. Do you guys allow for order notifications, shipping updates? Yep. Do you send those to mobile devices? Aside from email?
No.
Do any of you brand or market the fact that you have a mobile site or a mobile-friendly website on your marketing material? Whether it's packaging, order confirmations, pick pack slips? No? Okay. Let's do another example here. Grab your phone, text BOOTS, BOOTS-NY to the number 55155. Now, obviously, your customers are not going to text in a keyword after seeing a PowerPoint. This is an example of something that you could put on your order confirmation, print packaging. Basically, any existing collateral that you use that faces a customer is an opportunity for you to market mobile. This specific example is going to show us how we can actually collect mobile data. If you have an app, a native app, this process just kind of happens in the background by the person downloading it. So, what we're trying to do here, you have an existing email database, you can market the fact that we now have mobile alerts, mobile offers, get them to convert and provide that mobile number. Post-transaction mobile surveys, text and to join, which is the example we're doing right now. Capture and promote on social media. So let's take us through what just happened on all of your phones. Step 1, you text it in. In the background, what have I just collected on you? I now know your mobile number, I know your time zone, I know the state that you're in, I know your area code, And based on that boots NY keyword, I now know which marketing campaign you saw. I understand all of this information. To reward that good behavior, I've now given you access to an immediate action for a promo code, only valid today, creating that sense of urgency to convert. Here's a quick stat. Broadcast email, traditional open rate, we say 20% is a good measure, right? SMS marketing, 96% open rate within 4 minutes. Email, 6.5 hours. So you're talking about a way to engage with your consumers in a matter of minutes, and also knowing that 96% of them are going to open up that message. So for Misericordia and for St. Patrick's High School, fundraisers, having people opt in at fundraiser events, text in to donate, text in to support, this is completely something that could be used for you guys. So, just in case it did not work for you, this is what happened. How are we doing on time? 5 minutes? Okay. I texted in, it's thanked me, I got my offer, and now it's prompting me for additional information. I removed that last step on your example. But more importantly, once I've opted into that list, I can now collect additional data about you as a consumer. I can ask for your zip code, so I can send you location-relevant results or promos. I can ask you your favorite type of product, so I can send you care tips or warranty information. Or maybe your product is disposable. You can reach back out to them after 60 days when that may have run out. If your product's seasonal, maybe around banquets or events, what do you normally use our product for? We can time our messaging and marketing around those critical events. So remember that stat earlier where we looked at Google Analytics and the most popular devices were Apple, iOS, and tablets? That's an important stat. We know that a large majority of our mobile users are on iOS devices. So now we can look at doing specific marketing campaigns for mobile for iOS. So let's do another example. Text offers 1 to the number 55155. Just quickly raise your hand if you're already that far. So let's jump ahead. Number. And again, although we're going through this process manually, this can be something as easy as a user having a checkbox on their checkout form saying, yes, opt me into mobile alerts, or on the bottom of a receipt or a QR code, opt into mobile alerts. We're just going through this the hard way. What happens when you text in? You immediately get a message back. If you're an Android user, you're directed to a web page with an image that you can download and save. That image might have a barcode which will tie into your POS system or...
Good morning, the time is now 11 a.m. Please proceed
Yep.
to your next session, which will begin in 15 minutes.
I'm going to go over by 2 minutes if that's okay with you guys.
Is there something to it with the offer or offers?
Not off.
What's that?
You have the offers, but it doesn't work. It has to be offer.
Try offer 1, sorry. That's my fault.
Okay.
Rushing through setting it up. So an Android user, I got a link to this page. But remember that stat, iOS users are the most popular. We now have Passbook in iOS, correct? You guys familiar with what Passbook is? Passbook is a digital wallet that you can store coupons, gift cards, etc. You're sent a Passbook offer with a 20% off code. More importantly, it's geo-targeted, meaning that anytime that you're within 10 miles of this building right now, that Passbook offer is going to pop up on your mobile phone, prompting you to say, hey, you have a 20% off code, go validate it. So if you have a brick and mortar presence, you hold events, trade shows, fundraisers, you can use geo-targeting now to access customers and get them to act.
Is that with an application on the phone?
This is with
Like, that person comes within 10 miles of location, this coupon pops up, is that assuming that the customers download an application?
Passbook is baked into the new versions of iOS, so they don't have to download anything special.
So on my iPhone, if I went to 10 miles, this would pop up.
If you were to drive back tomorrow morning, this would pop up on your screen saying, "Hey, use this code."
Assuming I subscribe to something, right?
So, assuming you opted into offer one. This can be used for marketing too. You have these passbooks geo-targeted to where you have billboards or advertising or signage. So you can kind of start taking the ambiguity, the anonymous nature of a mobile user and allowing location data to support that conversion process. I know we kind of run through this very, very quickly. It's a lot of information all at once, but we'll skip through this. Next steps, I'll stick around if you guys have questions. Mike will stick around as well. We're happy to help. Use your one-on-one later in the day to challenge your account executives, ask them what they can be doing for you. If they can't do it themselves, there's a lot of subject matter experts in American Eagle who can help solve your mobile solutions, especially our strategy department. Talk internally, go back to your stakeholders, go back to your desks, and think of how at least one thing that we learned today can be applied. Really don't have time for Q&A, but I'll be around if you guys have any questions at all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.